Cancelled.
Schweezy.
Is Marvel back? And I think that's the main question I want to ask here today. Is Marvel back? Secret Invasion, the show Secret Invasion, was garbage. And it was a horrible movie. Actually, we should go back further. Let's look at the movies last year. So Ant-Man and the Wasp. I liked that movie. I thought that movie was fine. You know, I would say I enjoyed it. It just, you know, I think after everyone's just expecting, you know, every movie to be the best movie they've ever seen. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. They released Secret Invasion. I think Secret Invasion was after that. And oh, sorry for the clicks, everyone. Let me just not gonna edit that out. What did I just type in? Yeah, okay. Maybe this is the show, everyone. Hopefully, we'll get some momentum going sooner. Marvel movies 2023. Okay. Everything there is. Okay, so the Ant-Man and the Wasp. Everyone said it was mid. I enjoyed, and I'm okay with it being mid. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was phenomenal. So Marvel really didn't have that bad of a year. They just released too much shit, and they had 2 hits out of 5, and one was a James Gunn movie, which felt more like a James Gunn movie that got to take place in the Marvel Universe. Because he didn't have anything to lose, you know, when he made this. So he got the first F-bomb in a Marvel movie. And so, yeah, so we had Guardians 3, great. Secret Invasion, literally the worst Marvel property. Like, everything else has redeeming qualities to it, you know, and there's some entertaining moments, you know. I don't even think this show even had... Like, it had a couple good acting moments with Sam Jackson and Don Cheadle, but, like, besides that, like, those performances weren't good enough to justify how bad the show was. So, I just can't. I'm still upset about Secret Invasion. It's almost been a year. We got Loki season 2, banger. They hit it out of the park with the first season. They just kept on going with season 2. And just the thing with that show, like, you can make a good guess of where everything was going. Like, when you watched Quantumania, you're like, well, we know Kang's going to be, you know, a big bad in the future, so this guy has to be pretty tough. Like, Ant-Man might die. And it seemed like he was, and then they decided not to. Stuff like that. And so, yeah, you know, that movie... You know, you could kind of tell, like, okay, there's something with Kang going to go on. You know, that's going to continue in another movie. So you saw that, and you saw it in the post-credit scene. Guardians 3, like, you didn't know where that movie... Did I fart for the first time on this show? I think that was my first fart. I hope that got recorded well. Guardians 3, like, you didn't know where that was going, because it seemed like the end of this trilogy and these characters. So it seemed like James Gunn was wrapping up a story. Secret Invasion, you could kind of guess where it was going. Like, Skrulls are going to take over humans, and we're going to see the repercussions of that. Some other time, not in the show, the best part of the show was, like, the end. When, like, humans were, like, just attacking anyone that they possibly thought was a Skrull. I'm like, oh my god, that would be the show. Then, yeah, like Loki season 2, you didn't know where that show was going. That's what I was building up to. You did not know where that show was going to head. You're just like, okay, Kang's going to be involved, but how? Is he just going to, like, go full throttle? We got to play the note.
Let's go full throttle.
With Kang, or, like, what are they going to do? And, you know, the show kind of wrapped up like Kang wasn't a threat anymore, and I don't know if that's the case. I hopefully think what they're saying is that particular type of looking Kang the Conqueror is taking care of those, and the other ones are not. They're hiding somewhere. You know, it's the multiverse. You can do whatever the fuck you want in the multiverse. In the multiverse. universe where you can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm hoping I'm going to save that, and hopefully I make something out of that. Yeah, and so, yeah, you did not know where that show was going. It ended with the life tree, which was cool. Brings him... Because the show seemed very... It was a Loki show, but, like, it didn't really focus on, like, the Norse mythology of Loki. It just made a whole ass new story. And that was the thing. Like, you don't know what the fuck they're going to do with this. Then we get to the Marvels, which I liked a lot. And my mommy, Brie Larson, she was in the movie. And so I love that. And when I went to see it in theaters, there were like 4 other guys in there, and we all kind of looked alike. You know, I'm maybe not like we're not like identical, but like we had the same vibe. So it's just she has a type of fan. And then we got What If. That just kind of ended the year, and I liked What If. I love superhero and animation. You know, I think it's a good medium. I love live action movies. Don't get me wrong, but I think the animated medium is where we could really see some shine going into all of like these superhero stories. But I don't know. I think people see animation, they're like, that's for fucking kids. I'm an adult. I'm an adult. I finger bang. I don't fucking watch cartoons. But no, season 2 is really cool. And the concept of What If is taking Marvel stories, like even in this case, it was in the comics, it was taking these Marvel stories or these Marvel characters and then adding a new twist to it. Like, what if when Star-Lord was supposed to be picked up from Earth, instead T'Challa, the Black Panther, was picked up and he became Peter Quill, basically, or whatever. You know, it's like interesting to see those stories. And this show like really brought some new ideas, some old ideas, and really made it fucking go together. And I thought that was rad. So then we get into this year, and besides Echo, which Echo was, we're going to set up Kingpin, and the whole show is, we're going to set up Kingpin in the Daredevil show, and maybe Spider-Man. Probably Spider-Man. We get to X-Men 97. Now, X-Men 97... Kind of a curveball. It was with Marvel Studios. It's Marvel Studios is making it. It's not like Marvel Studios with fucking Sony making goddamn Madam Web. You know, it's like, she was in the rainforest studying. She was in the forest studying spiders. I'm like, Oscars right there. We 97. So it was the X-Men 97. It was the X-Men show from the 90s. It aired on Fox Kids. That was this X-Men, and it was just a fucking great show. They were just like, we're gonna do this. We're like, sometimes you just write people at the right time, and they just caught it, and they kept it like so classic. Even for the 90s, they didn't try to. There was a couple 90s things that they did, but they really tried to stay close to the comic source material, especially in regards to like character designs, and which was so awesome. But like the thing with this show, what got really everyone excited is that was kind of the first MCU, because they had crossovers with Spider-Man, where the X-Men were in that show and Spider-Man was in this show. Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk, they all showed up in, you know, even like in 97 and the show before that, and including the Fantastic Four too, which Morph kind of turned into Mr. Fantastic for a second, which Morph is a whole other thing, because I think Morph's powers were supposed to be similar to Mystique's, right? Like, I didn't know he could, I don't know if he can copy the powers, but in the show he could copy the powers, meaning that a lot of the problems in the show could have been solved with Morph just turning into that person and using their powers. But that's just me, though. So let's jump into it.
Let's just jump into it.
On what happened in this show and why it was so fucking good. So to me, X-Men is like basically they just literally just carry straight on from the very last episode of the original series. Basically, what happened was Charles Xavier was attacked by Gyrick, and it was to assassinate him, but like it messed him up so bad because of his psychic abilities or whatever, that the Shi'ar Empire and his lady friend over in the Shi'ar Empire took him away to see if they could do any of their more advanced medical research and stuff like that on him. And so everyone presumes Charles is dead and stuff like that. So now Cyclops wants to be the leader of the team, and they basically take on Gyrick, and they take on the Sentinels and stuff like that. And you're just like, oh, Sentinels are back just for like this one episode. I was wrong. I just thought they were going to be like a one and done type of situation, but no, that was not the case. We'll go on to that. And they're looking for Trask because he invented the Sentinels, and we're like, something's going on with these Sentinels. And basically, the Sentinels are these giant ass robots, and eventually they become so advanced that they can basically just one hand every mutant out there and like just fucking slay them. Like they eventually like start being built with certain tech that Magneto can't do anything to them, and like at certain points Magneto can't do much to them with how they're made. And so in like their robots, so they're immune to telepathy and so it's crazy. And so yeah, and then find at the end of the episode that Magneto was in Charles's will was left to be the leader of the X-Men. And assuming Charles's hope was that, him and Magneto once had this dream that mutants could live peacefully, because, it's a metaphor for racism in the 60s. That's the entire show. It's slowly, I assume it's going to become a metaphor for like being gay or trans or something like that. I think that's going to be when we start getting a new live adaptation of the X-Men. It's probably going to be in the vein of focusing more on LGBT, because you have to make it for the modern times and stuff like that. It's just, how it is. And not that racism still doesn't exist. It does, and it can still be a metaphor for racism. And that's like the original intent. But, it's more for discrimination of any kind. That's the whole thing. And that was Charles and Eric's original dream. So, that's why that would be my reason why, because like they have such love and respect for each other as friends. Like even then, like Magneto would put his beliefs aside that mutants should be superior to humans because in their world it's the next step in human evolution. Therefore, the mutants should be more powerful than the humans because people think the humans are a dying race. And in my mind, to be honest with you, if mutants started existing and I wasn't a mutant, I'd be like, you know what? By the time, I probably have the gene or whatever, or I'm going to procreate with someone who has the gene or whatever. I'm like, you know what? When we get to that problem, I'll be dead for a while. Like, we just have to make sure we build a world, for the most part, for our future generations, like what Charles said, like we can coexist, we don't have to like fight to the death, or whatever. So we get into episode 2 where Magneto's in charge, and like the UN wants him arrested because he's Magneto, and he just does like he's not, like the thing with Magneto, why I love Magneto so much is I don't consider Magneto a villain. Magneto being a villain doesn't register for me. What I see Magneto as is someone who's willing to fight for his people, because a lot of times like he responds to like mutant attacks, and a lot of times sometimes he's the little shit, and he knows when he's the shit, and he knows he did a bad thing, like in my mind Magneto's not a villain. He is a good guy who just is not doing the right thing for his cause. He's just kind of willing to do the ends justify the means and stuff like that. And also being part of the Holocaust, he has a lot of, he sees what can happen. He has like a different viewpoint than us. So that's what makes Magneto such an interesting character, because he's not a villain. He's just misunderstood and doesn't choose he chooses a different action than what would happen. It's interesting. So he goes to the UN, goes to everything, and the Friends of Humanity, which is basically a terrorist group wanting to destroy mutants, kind of like the Brotherhood of Mutants, kind of are terrorists in regards to humans, in their minds. So in this attack, this dude fires this gun that takes away Storm's powers, and basically Magneto's just he escapes from his little mutant suppressing thing, and he just lifts everyone up above the earth, and he's like, "This is the shit. You guys are the fucking shit." And we're all so insignificant. It's why care about this? And let's just all live in peace and stuff like that. And so yeah, they live in peace, and the UN's we're going to recognize Genosha as a nation and add them to the UN. So we're making peace with everyone, because if you don't have because like the thing with why I think Charles is correct in his viewpoints and why I understand Magneto, but I believe in what Charles is saying. Why I believe that is because the evolutionary idea is that since the mutants are the next step in human evolution, that they're going to wipe out regular humans and it's going to be genocide, where probably what would happen is everyone would become a mutant over time and eventually get that or not have powers or what, or be a mutant but not have any significant powers or whatever. Honestly, that's kind of how it would be. So like if you think about it as genocide, yeah, it's bad. But when you think about it, that's what Charles's mindset is. He's like, it doesn't have to be genocide, No one has to die. We can just live our lives, And, that's what I always think about big political things. It's like, at the end of the day, I have to worry about my own survival. And, that's what we're all thinking about. Like, everyone has a right. We all are just worried about our own survival. And we're all just trying to live and everything. So that's what happens then. But then, at the end of the episode, Jean Grey shows up at the door after Jean and Scott have their baby. And they were like, uh-oh. There's a fake Jean Grey that we go into the next episode, where it's basically, I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show when it aired, but like the Madeline Pryor Jean Grey, what basically happened was that Mr. Sinister, classic X-Men villain, he cloned Jean because he thinks Jean and Scott have perfect DNA. Then he swapped that gene out with his own gene and kept the original gene in his lair or whatever, and then she went and they lived a life, but they all have like the same memories because they're the same brain. It's weird mutant logic, in the show. And so what would happen is Scott and Jean would have a baby, and then once the baby's born, then he can like use his mind control diamond thing to take over Madeline and get the baby and stuff like that. And so they all have a thing, and they fight the Goblin Queen, and then they break the spell, and they rescue Baby Nathan. But Baby Nathan has a technovirus, and so he has to go back to the future with Bishop and be separated from his parents. And then Madeline Pryor goes off and leaves, and the original Jean is back with Scott, but they don't know how long, and Scott's like, maybe I'm in love with Madeline, but not this Jean anymore, and Scott's conflicted too. And then we get another flashbacks. Then we go back to Storm, and she runs into Forge, and Forge is like, I think I can help you get your powers back. So we can finally get fucking Goddess Storm back. Half of the X-Men, I'm thinking about like when they get the X-Men in the MCU. I just gotta say Marvel. I don't even care about the actor. Like, maybe make Aurora, Storm, and Rogue. Just make them really hot, They don't even have to be good. They just have to be hot. That's my opinion. For a good X-Men, that's my take on it. What would make a good X-Men movie? It would be make Rogue and Storm hot. That's all we ask. So then we get into Motendo, which was just like kind of a filler episode, but that's kind of the original series too. You'd have like an episode of like a one arc adventure, and then 3 episodes of the same story, or from the whole season be a whole story arc. Basically, Jubilee and Roberto, aka Sunspot. Basically, in the original show, every good movie or show kind of has, like, especially if you start out, you kind of have like a character whose perspective you're following. You're third person, but you're following one person's perspective, and so you're kind of seeing it that way. And in the original show, it was Jubilee, but now this is kind of a new show, but also a continuation of an old show. We're going with Sunspot as like the character we learn about everything who the X-Men are from this point, so you don't have to just have like 5 solo movies to say it or whatever. They get trapped into a Motendo, which was like a combination of, which it looked like a combination of like an SNES and a Dreamcast like put together, and Motendo being Motendo, you get the point. So she fights Mojo in a video game, and then she wins and meets her older self, and blah blah blah. That was that. And then we get to Life Death Part 1, this is like the show is finally getting amazing. So Forge tries to get Storm's powers back, and at first it seems like it doesn't work, but I think Storm was in a weird spot mentally where she was suppressing her powers and not letting them loose or whatever. And so after a demon attacks Forge, they have to go into a cave, which is a very tight space, and Storm's claustrophobic. So, she gets the fruit, and then she gets out, and she realized she had her powers, that she was just suppressed. I think that's what they were trying to say, is that what Forge did worked, but she was just suppressing her powers, because she was just had a mental block from it, and had a life crisis, in the process. So then she has her powers back, and then, I talked about the second part already. That was the whole part. All right. So we talked about that, and then I'll just sum up what happens at the end of the second part and this, and then we get into Remember It. Now this was the fucking episode. This was the episode you're gonna remember from this season. Basically, a group of them, they go to Genosha. Magneto, Rogue, Gambit, and Gambit. They go to Genosha, and Nightcrawler's there, just hanging out and doing shit like that. And they're having a gala, they're going to be in the UN, and they're just having fun. And then Master Mold and all these, grown Sentinels just wipe out the place. And you see Cable try to warn everyone, but he keeps getting pushed away. We find out about that later. And so there's just, this genocidal attack on Genosha. And it wasn't like any government. It was Trask and the secret villain the entire time. And there's an attack. And at the end of it, Gambit gets stabbed by the Sentinel on a pole, and it's holding the pole, and he's like, name's Gambit, remember, in his dumb Creole voice. And then he uses his kinetic energy one last time to really just fucking destroys the Master Mold, and then Gambit is dead. And we were all sad, because during the whole episode, Rogue was like, I could be the queen of Genosha with Magneto, but I'm not in love with Magneto. I'm in love with Gambit, and that thing. And then Gambit dies, and she's like, I was in love with Gambit. And that's when you knew. Then Genosha's basically completely destroyed, and it was sad, because it was like an innocent attack, and it was supposed to represent the creator of the show, Bo DeMaio's, because he used to go to the Pulse nightclub before it was shot up and stuff like that, and it was kind of like, I could have been there that night. That could have been me. I could have been there. I could have died. It was crazy. Then Back to Life, Death Part 2, which I already spoiled. Storm got the flower thing, and the saved Forge got her powers back. And then she sees the Genosha massacre, and she's like, all right, time to be an X-Man again. Forge, you're being an X-Man too. Then we get into Bright Eyes, which was Gambit's funeral. The sad shit. And everyone just goes to town. You get a Rogues just storms through General Ross's base, and he's like, we have a Hulk here. He's like, get what you want. And then she sees Captain America just for a cameo, and that was usually I'm going to send my team when we know anything. And I don't think the Avengers are going to do anything about this. And then find out they protect the president in the last episode. I'm like, oh, that's what you're doing. They locate Gyrick in Mexico, and then she absorbs his memories and then blacks out, and then and then they find her in Mexico, which that part never made any sense, by the way. Then they find Trask. He's in Madripoor, which we saw in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is where there are an island where there are no laws, so people just do whatever the fuck they want there, but somehow they still run like a society. I don't know, because it's there's giant skyscrapers, and you're one person in there could have pissed the wrong person off, and they just blow up the building. It's crazy. That's crazy stuff. But anyways, they're like, Trask, tell us what you did. And he's like, I don't know. And then they kill him, and then he turns into Prime Sentinel, which is basically a Sentinel taking over a human, and they fight, and then Cable saves the day, and he's like, I know, I'm Cable, and they're like, Jean and Scott are like, son. And and then you find out Bastion's holding Magneto captive. And then, that's pretty much, Then we get to the last part, Tolerance is Extinction, which, just the way to end it. My brothers and sisters and others. He reveals Masterminds all, and, wait, no. So, just looking at my notes. So, the UN then exposes Xavier's survival, making it look like he faked his death for the X-Men's sympathy or whatever as a martyr, and then so they think that, and so that's what Bastion did. And then we learn what Bastion's true plans are. He wanted to exploit. He's creating all these major events in the world to get humans and mutants fighting, and then he turns everyone into like a sentinel, and then creates this perfect society. Because in the original show, Master Mold was like, humans are mutants, and so he wants to wipe out everyone and create them in his own image. Crazy shit. Not a metaphor for anything. And so we learned that, and so then Bastion turns on all his Prime Sentinels that were like Russian sleeper agents or whatever, and they like go in and like they start attacking and everything. So yeah, and Sinister was a part of this too, which was like crazy because it's like he was a minor villain in the show, but he gets his fate. Xavier comes back at the end of this episode. He's back on Earth. He's like, "Where are the X-Men?" He sends them to me, my X-Men. Like the classic Xavier.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So yeah, they decide to. Oh yeah, and before that, the end of the first episode, what happens is Magneto escapes from Bastion, and it kind of seems like it's Bastion's plan. And like he goes to like the South Pole, and then he just shuts off the magnetism of the Earth, and he's like, now no one has electricity. So I'm like, crazy shit, and they're like, Magneto was right. And then so Magneto's plan is to try to get all the mutants to Asteroid M, because apparently if the Earth stops spinning, I guess things die. I think that's how it works. I guess you don't have the regulation of night and day that helps things grow, and I don't know. There's some science, but Neil deGrasse Tyson would tell us something. It's going to tell us something about this. So Magneto's plan is like, I'm going to get all the mutants back up to Asteroid M, where it was just where all the mutants could live in peace, kind of what he wanted with Genosha. But now they're just separating from Earth altogether and just going to let Earth die, or let all humans die. Then the mutants are going to take over, and just, I don't know, force something similar to that, and then take, something weird like that. And then they all try to face off against Magneto, and then, Charles has to like enter his mind, and then Wolverine stabs him with his claws, and then Magneto takes the adamantium out of Wolverine, which was like, oh, we're going nuclear now? All right. Because, like, they always fought like they were gentlemen, like, we're a gentleman's sport, and, I'm not going to kill you. We're both mutants, we are brothers. And stuff like that. And so Magneto's always just been, like, on the defensive with Wolverine, because Wolverine was all attack and he was always defensive, and now Magneto attacks. And he goes hard. And we don't know what's going to happen to Wolverine, so we don't know if his healing factor will heal back the adamantium, or will it just keep healing him without just bone claws and stuff like that. None of us know. It is what it is. So we end up with a cool thing. So Jean fights Bastion, but Sinister has control of Cable from the technovirus, and he always had this plan. So thinks he's going to kill Jean, but the Phoenix comes back, which out of nowhere, I'm like, it's like, maybe the best explanation I have for like the Phoenix coming back is like, some of its power remained in Jean, and so like when she dies, she rebirths, and now Jean can never die. That'd be an interesting story, or eventually, like when Jean's ready to die, it'll go with it. But if Jean's not ready to die, she'll never die. That'd be an interesting, I don't know. Maybe that's something they could do. But then, they defeat Bastion on Asteroid M, and like he's like, we could save you, Bastion. He's like, no, and then he just dies with it. But in the process, the U.S. government tries to nuke Asteroid M, and then somehow they all get separated in time, and so Cyclops and Jean are in the future with Nathan, like a child Cable, and then the rest of the gang, they're in ancient Egypt about to meet young Apocalypse. And it ends with a post-credit scene of Apocalypse holding up a playing card, probably teasing an Age of Apocalypse storyline, which they could insert them versus the Avengers in there, and stuff like that. And that's what I think. They're probably going to get back to time, or it's going to be an Apocalypse show, which, I thought because I thought at first that bringing the Master Mold story and starting to bring in Bastion, who I probably haven't explained Bastion, basically how the story explains it is Nimrod in the future is a more advanced Master Mold, and it came back to the past to assassinate Charles Xavier, but failed when I think Cable or Bishop saved him, and then helped out with that, and so they saved that, but like part of Nimrod became like liquid goo or something, went to a janitor, and that janitor had a kid, and that thing infiltrated Bastion, and Bastion was a mutant that could control technology, and it knew all this stuff from the future, so it was like the first Prime Sentinel, the Master Sentinel, stuff like that. That's what the story was, but he's defeated now, so I don't have to worry about him anymore. And yeah, I'm curious, how would they make Avengers versus X-Men? It feels like they're teasing it, like why are they putting Spider-Man and Captain America and Iron Man, Doctor Strange? Why are they putting these cameos in, and like the Watcher too? Like, it's Marvel Studios is making it. We're assuming it's the Watcher, that guy. And so very interesting to see where they're going to go with this, but I'm super excited to do that. And yeah, and like they were cool with the Easter eggs in this. Like at the opening, it was Gene the Phoenix, so they were teasing that. And then Bastion was in like every episode, like in a picture next to Cable, like in the back of his head, like him walking, and like you didn't know he was the villain yet, but like he was there, and everyone's like, I think that's. You watch like screen credits, they're like, I think that's Bastion in there. Oh, that's Bastion. Okay, and then we find out Bastion's the end of the kid. I think the last thing I want to say is a lot of people thought that these storylines were rushed in X-Men 97. I was okay with that because I'm like, I don't want anything after season 3. I really just wanted to do these 2 seasons, and that's going to kind of all ends with the multiverse saga. And then after that, it's just kind of like we're watching Marvel movies with the X-Men and already exist and everything like that, like a more full universe, I just think that'd be rad. And so I don't want them to, get to a point where they jump the shark or something like that, or get to the point where they suck and,
This is the type of guy you get.
So, yeah, we'll be right back. Thank you for watching this clip. Watch it again or watch something